All right, welcome to a lovely Monday evening across the country. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian, young Turks. I've got stories that I'm very, very excited about today, and including, I hope you're sitting for this, stories that will prove that Donald Trump is not that bright, and I'm not even referring to his executive time story, although that is wonderful.
How jealous are you?
I know, right?
Of his executive time.
It's amazing that the president can work so much less than the average American when it is the most important job in the country.
He's just fostering creativity in the administration.
Yes, well, apparently that's what he says, right? And then obviously we're gonna dive into Northam, those controversies. As usual, our opinions will not be ordinary. So we don't necessarily go by what everybody else is saying, so buckle up.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
Well, we don't, but it's interesting you say that in the context of that story.
Well, that's how I roll. I roll interesting. Okay.
Okay.
So now there are 3 programming notes that I want to tell you about real quick. 2 of them I'm totally excited about. 1 I am not. How's that for a tease? So tonight at 8:05 p.m. Eastern, Rebel headquarters, 2 really interesting guests. One is Abdul El Sayed. He ran for governor of Michigan. He is an expert on healthcare and Medicare for all. He's going to come on to clarify the difference between Medicare for all and what the establishment is now pushing. Medicare for some.
Isn't that what we have now?
Yeah, well, that's right. They're like, and this is a real plan by the Democratic establishment, not the Republican establishment, saying, we'll give you a little bit more Medicare, just a little bit. Okay, but it is complicated. Can you have private insurance in Medicare for all system? All those questions hopefully will be answered tonight. So if you care about that issue, do not miss that interview. It'll be hopefully very, very clarifying. And then in the second interview, I'll be taking on a conservative who thinks that taxing the rich more will be harmful to the economy and the country. I do not agree. So that fireworks should be interesting. Okay, the second programming note I'm excited about is the State of the Union. We'll do that tomorrow. It's live and free, available to everyone at tyt.com/live. Play-by-play, me, Anna, John. Emma Biglin is in the house and she will do it with us. Live coverage starts at 5:50 p.m., so 10 minutes before the State of the Union begins. And then we'll have extra coverage as always for our members. So that's tyt.com/join to become a member. Now the programming note I am not excited about. So last night we covered the Super Bowl for you guys here. We were a second screen, you could watch along with us. It was fun, we had a good time, not a great time. Now all of those things that we cover for you guys are always available for the members. But this is the one I urge you not to watch. Because we went from the most exciting Super Bowl last year to the least exciting Super Bowl this year. So
it felt the same to me. I don't know.
Okay, but I'm imagining how many people might watch us watch the least exciting Super Bowl of all time, and that probably is not a high number. But if you want, it is available for members at tyt.com/join.
Way to sell it, Cenk.
I'm just look, our trademark's honesty. So there it is. Okay. But the State of the Union should be great, and our guests tonight are great, and so is the show. So let's get started.
All right. It has just been announced that the Pentagon plans on sending nearly 4,000 troops to the southern border in an effort to provide more border security. Now, it's abundantly clear that Donald Trump is the individual pushing for this to happen, and there are members of his own administration who have spoken out against that. But before we get to those comments, let me give you the details on what's going on. According to according to NPR, another 3,750 troops will be sent to the southern border to help install wire barriers and to monitor crossings.
That should be really helpful.
The new deployment will bring the total number of active duty troops there to around 6,000. So remember, we already had troops at the border because Trump had sent them there in response to a dangerous caravan, which we then heard nothing about following the midterm elections. Another 2,100 National Guard troops are also stationed there. One other thing to keep in mind is that Patrick Shanahan, who is the acting defense secretary in Trump's administration, said this about sending more troops to the border. At the Pentagon, people I talk with say, listen, this is a waste of money. You don't use active duty troops for this. Military troops deployed at the border are not allowed to apprehend migrants the way border agents do. Some people say, like, no, we get it. This is ridiculous, and he can't come out and say that he thinks it's ridiculous. But to be fair to him, there are certainly members of the Pentagon who think that this is a waste of resources and completely unnecessary.
Yeah, so look guys, this is the most obvious political trick ever, right? So if the military is not allowed to do law enforcement inside the country, which they are not, constitutionally not allowed to, legally not allowed to under any circumstance. And even the Trump administration acknowledges that. Why are we sending them there? So they can't stop anyone from crossing the border. They're legally not allowed to stop anyone from crossing the border. So they're there to build, what, wires, put up wires? Couldn't we hire people at minimum wage to put up wires? Why do you need the military to put up wires or a fence? That makes no sense at all. The only reason you would do that is for political theater. So Trump, as usual, hiding behind the troops and using them as a political gimmick. You MAGA guys must be so proud.
And this is, again, the second time that he's doing it, using our military for his political purposes, using them as props, and it's disgusting. But he was specifically asked about what he expects to happen prior to February 15th. Now, February 15th is when Congress needs to find a long-term solution to funding the government. And so Trump is certain that they will not agree to giving him the funding for the border wall. And so he has all sorts of tricks up his sleeve. We've talked about how he plans on declaring a national emergency, but he had some interesting things to say during an interview with Face the Nation over the weekend. Here he is talking about a possible government shutdown.
Would you shut down the government again?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens on February 15th.
And you're not taking it off the table?
Well, I don't take anything off the table. I don't like to take things off the table. It's that alternative. It's national emergency. It's other things. And, there have been plenty national emergencies called. And this really is an invasion of our country by human traffickers. These are people that are horrible people, bringing in women mostly, but bringing in women and children into our country, human trafficking. And we're going to have a strong border. And the only way you have a strong border is you need a physical barrier, you need a wall. And anybody that says you don't, they're just playing games.
Look, I know that he is inconsistent all the time, and so it's almost worthless to bring this up, but I can't help myself. He just admitted there that the majority of people coming in are women and children. And then he simultaneously calls them dangerous criminals, drug dealers, rapists. No, they're women and children who are seeking asylum, that, but he'll smear them, in one interview or in one tweet, and then he'll turn around and, refer to them as women and children who are nothing more than victims of human trafficking.
Yeah, look, everything he says is a lie. So I don't know if the majority of the people coming in are women and children. I wouldn't be surprised at that fact. Are the majority of them women and children who are being trafficked into the sex trade? No, not remotely. That's totally made up, 100% fiction. It's not like that phenomenon does not exist, but is it a significant portion of the people coming in? No expert has ever said that. He did that to demagogue, right? Oh my God, all these dangerous human traffickers are bringing in people to get trafficked into this country. Yeah. I've heard all this demagoguery before. It's total nonsense. It only works on idiots who wear red hats. Now let's go back to the political theater he's playing. So he's going to declare the national emergency, it looks like. Even the Republicans don't want him to, because it's also not very constitutional. You're supposed to declare it only and subvert Congress's ability to spend only in actual emergencies like outbreak of a significant disease or an attack in the country that you have to respond to immediately. etc. And this does not fall into any of those categories. So he's sending the troops over there so that he can say in the State of the Union tomorrow and later in February 15th when they get to the deadline, well, I sent the troops there because it's a national emergency. This is so important.
Yeah.
And then of course sprinkle in the usual Trump absurdities. It's national emergency and other things. And I don't like to take anything off the table. I like things on the table. Okay, so, but okay, this is all the same thing over and over again. And if he does get his national emergency and he gets 5 out of the $70 billion that he needs for the wall, a tiny fraction of the wall will be built. And according to Trump's logic, that means we'll all still be in grave danger because only a tiny percentage has been built under his watch. And that's all he asked for. He didn't fight for it earlier. And let's just call it what it is. So the wall, it's a physical manifestation of conservative voters' cowardice. So they're deathly afraid of everything. Gay people, oh my God, trans people are gonna come into my bathroom. Oh, I'm so afraid, I'm so afraid. Oh, Latinos are coming in, the human traffickers are coming in. The Muslims scare me, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. And Trump knows his voters are cowards, so he just keeps pressing on that nerve, that raw nerve. Oh my God, remember cowards, how scared you are. You need a big bad wall to protect you from all the traffickers and the rapists and the criminals, and I alone can protect you. And the guys wearing the red hats, cower under those hats. Like, oh, please, Daddy Trump, build a wall or a tiny portion of a wall.
Yeah, look, I think some of the wall supporters genuinely do believe that the wall will somehow solve some of the problems that they've made up in their heads. But I think that the majority of Americans, the majority of the electorate understand that the wall would not actually solve some of the issues that are rightfully raised. So for instance, drug trafficking, okay. I mean, my solution to drug trafficking would be legalize and regulate all of it. I know that sounds crazy, but that takes power away from drug traffickers, right? Yeah. Like, let's get rid of drug traffickers by taking their power, their influence, their money away from them, their whole business away from them.
Anna, that sounds totally crazy.
Yeah, okay. I know.
I mean, what are you gonna do next? Legalize all alcohol?
Well, here's
not
the thing.
Just beer, but all alcohol? That sounds crazy.
Drugs coming in to the United States because there's clearly a market for drugs in the United States. We have junkies in the US, and there are drug cartels exploiting that and taking advantage of that. Now, I'm not saying what they're doing is right, but why don't we take a good hard look at what's happening in our own country, in our own backyard, and think about, I don't know, smart ways to solve this issue, because a wall's not gonna solve it. But the second thing I wanted to mention is, look, I think most Americans realize that the wall would not solve drug trafficking. Right now, the El Chapo trial is unfolding, and we're learning more and more about how he did smuggle drugs here into the United States. He did it through tunnels, he did it through legal ports of entry. A wall wouldn't have solved that issue. So again, Americans know. But with that said, Trump keeps regurgitating the same nonsense talking point as if he even cares about people who are addicted to drugs or cares about Americans in general. All he cares about is constructing his hate monument so he could turn back to his base. He can turn back to Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh and be like, please stop bullying me. I built your stupid wall. Now here he is completely defaming Nancy Pelosi. I have my issues with Nancy Pelosi, but what he says here is just nothing more than a complete and utter lie. Take a look.
I think she is very bad for our country. She knows that you need a barrier. She knows that we need border security. She wanted to win a political point. I happen to think it's very bad politics because basically she wants open borders. She doesn't mind human trafficking, or she wouldn't do this because, you know,
she offered you over $1 billion for border security.
Excuse me?
She offered over $1 billion for border security. She doesn't want the wall.
She's costing the country hundreds of billions of dollars because what's happening is when you have a porous border and when you have drugs pouring in and when you have people dying all over the country because of people like Nancy Pelosi who don't want to give proper border security for political reasons, she's doing a terrible disservice to our country.
Yeah, so let's be absolutely clear. Nancy Pelosi and congressional Democrats have, in many cases, offered Trump additional funds for border security. But it's not good enough for him because he wants money specifically for a wall that would not solve the criminal issues that he keeps bringing up. And he just said that Nancy Pelosi doesn't believe in border security. I mean, he just keeps saying it, and I'm glad that he got challenged there. I'm glad that there was a follow-up question. They have offered you money for border security, which you then turned down because you want that wall funding. And then when he talks about, oh, Nancy Pelosi is costing the government, what did he say? Hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions of dollars. First of all, you want $70 billion total for that border wall. That's what it will cost to construct that border wall. Secondly, you're the one who spearheaded the longest government shutdown in US history, which cost us a ton of money, all because you wanted to be a stubborn little baby.
Okay, so the hundreds of billions of dollars number. Where did he get that from? Well, he pulled it out of somewhere. You want to guess where it is? Okay.
Breitbart?
Yeah, no.
Oh.
Out of an orifice.
Breitbart?
So, anyways, I'm so tired of his lies. I'm tired of documenting his lies. Do you know how many provable lies he's told so far in his administration? There was just a story about this in the Washington Post. Over 8,400 lies. Okay, he has no attachment to the truth. Neither do his followers. They don't care at all. They're like, oh my God, Daddy Trump, I'm so scared. What will Pelosi do to us? I need a safe space, Donald. I need a safe space. Please protect us from the bad old mean Nancy Pelosi. You guys sound so tough. Anyway, to the substance of it, look, it's actually worse than what even the reporter there pointed out. The Democrats actually offered $25 billion, 5 times what Donald Trump is asking for border security last time around. But Trump is such an idiot negotiator, he turned it down because he thought he was going to get a better deal.
No, I make the best deals, Cenk.
Art of the deal is you turn down 5 times as much, and later you beg and beg for 1/5 of it. And then you declare national emergencies based on lies. And then you send the military to go build wires.
He's so tired of winning.
Yeah. Okay, you're such a great negotiator. Hey, if you want to criticize Democrats for offering $25 billion last year for problems that are not emergencies that existed before or are not going to get solved by further walls or fences, I think that's a legitimate criticism of both Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. If you want to lie about them and say they don't care about border security and they've never offered money for it, that's a different matter. But no one in their right mind doesn't think that Donald Trump is a liar. Everyone knows Donald Trump's a liar, including his own supporters. But in the mainstream media, we have to play games. Some do a good job of pointing out the lies, like the story that I just referenced. But they all go back to saying, no, but you can't call him a liar. We have to say, well, maybe he prevaricates or got confused on every single issue he's ever talked about. So no, as usual, he's lying here about Pelosi and the Democrats, and it's all for political theater. And so, MAGA guys, I hope you enjoy wasting our money. That's taxpayer money that you're throwing down the toilet by building a tiny portion of a wall with steel slats or a beaded curtain or whatever it is that you think is gonna help you sleep at night because you're so unbelievably scared.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, we will discuss how Trump plans on using Iraq to carry out his agenda against Iran.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I'm going to Twitter here. Nacho Mama writes in, I've never watched a whole football game ever until yesterday because I could mute the game and watch TYT. The game was as expected, but TYT made it worthwhile. Thank you, Nacho Mama. We appreciate that. I think Robert Weichel IV has a slightly different opinion. He says, I sadly watched the Young Turks watch the Super Bowl, and I had the same good time that Anna looked like she was having.
I actually I enjoyed my time. I don't know, I was having fun. We were all together, we're talking, we're eating.
Yeah, look, the game was boring and uninteresting, but at least we had a good time.
Yeah, I had a great time.
All right, yeah, it would have been better, obviously, if the game was more fun. Anyways, all right, here we go. That boy's hell on turlets writes in. I'm not saying this. This person is saying it, in that preface. How many of Putin's buddies traffic women into America? I wouldn't be surprised if some of them ended up in Trump Tower at some point. All right, moving forward. Okay, Cynthia Sorensen says, haven't gotten to see my TYT for over a month, but I quit my job today. Now my day is awesome.
Oh, wow.
Okay, Cynthia, I hope you're okay, but I'm glad that your day is awesome, and thank you for watching with us. Hashtag TYT Live to talk to us through Twitter, and obviously member comments at tyt.com. By the way, if you like what we're saying every once in a while and you're like, yeah, go to tyt.com/yes and do a donation. It helps sustain the show. Obviously, membership is a great way to do it, and you'll get all of our shows but we'll take it at tyt.com/yes as well. And if you're watching on the website, there's a blue button right next to you that you can do that through. Okay, what's next, Anna?
Donald Trump's foreign policy has been all over the place, but he has been consistent on one thing: the fact that he thinks that Iran is an adversary and will remain so. So during a recent interview with Face the Nation, he talked about what his strategy is with Iran. Take a look.
I want to be looking a little bit at Iran because Iran is a real problem.
Whoa, that's news. You're keeping troops in Iraq because you want to be able to strike in Iran?
No, because I want to be able to watch Iran. All I want to do is be able to watch. We have an unbelievable and expensive military base built in Iraq. It's perfectly situated for looking at all over different parts of the troubled Middle East. Rather than pulling up, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, we're going to keep watching and we're going to keep seeing. And if there's trouble, if somebody's looking to do nuclear weapons or other things, we're going to know it before they do.
So you're going to trust the intelligence that you receive?
I am going to trust the intelligence that I'm putting there. But I will say this, my intelligence people, if they said, in fact, that Iran is a wonderful kindergarten, I disagree with them 100%.
Okay, so that last comment makes no sense. If my intelligence people tell me that Iran is not trouble, I disagree 100%. But they have the facts. So what are you disagreeing based on? Oh, well, they say that the facts are in this direction, but I don't care what the facts are, I disagree. Okay, fascinating.
Let me just add something real quick to that. Remember, last week, the intelligence community released its annual report indicating that Iran, for its part, is still following through with the nuclear deal, even though the United States had pulled out and implemented or reimposed those sanctions against Iran. Just make sure you know that as we continue this story.
Yeah, and so Trump is basically saying at the end there, I don't care what the stinking facts are or what the assessment is, what the intelligence community says. I like my fantasies, so I'm just gonna go with my fantasies instead. Now, the heart of this story. If you want to keep troops in Iraq, not to fight ISIS, but to monitor Iran, the very last thing you would say is, I want to keep troops inside Iraq to monitor Iran. Now, why? Because Iraq is majority Shiite, and a lot of their political parties are connected to Iran, and even the ones that are not, like one led by Muqtada al-Sadr that won the elections, got the most amount of parliament members, they do not want the Americans in to begin with, and they're Shia, and they certainly don't want the Americans in to monitor Iran, who is also Shia. So that causes a situation politically in Iraq that becomes untenable. Then those Iraqi politicians, even if they secretly wanted to work with us to keep the troops in, now can't, because the idiot in chief said to the whole world, I'm keeping troops inside Iraq to monitor Iran. Now the Iraqi politicians are like, God damn it. Now you're forcing our hand to make sure that we kick you out so you can't monitor Iran. He is so painfully stupid.
So this is why the intelligence briefings are incredibly important, because the president of the United States, regardless of who he or she is, doesn't know everything. And so intelligence briefings and briefings by the intelligence community are important so you understand some of the influences behind the scenes. So what type of alliances do some of these Iraqi politicians have? And so yes, Cenk, you're absolutely right. There are some alliances with Iran, and there is now a lot of worry over what the real intentions of the United States are and whether or not Iraqi politicians are gonna start pushing the US out. Now, senior American officers and diplomats said Mr. Trump's comments could undercut the delicate negotiations in Iraq by inflaming fears among the Iraqis that the moves would be a guise to check Iran.
Because the president just admitted it's a guise to check Iran. It's not there, they won't be there to help Iraq fight ISIS. God, you gotta go to a briefing, you gotta be able to read past the page if you're the president. You gotta be able to do something more than executive time, watching Fox and Friends all day long. So look, in this case, I don't want more troops in Iraq. So I'm actually perfectly unbiased here. Good, I'm glad he screwed it up. And I hope that we bring our troops home because they're counterproductive over there. Okay, now having said that, if you are on Trump's side, you should be way more angry. Because if you want to keep troops in Iraq, like Trump says he wants to, this is the absolute worst way to do it.
So let's hear a little bit from some politicians in Iraq. One member of parliament says there is distrust of the American government, even if they say they are coming to protect us against Daesh, which is ISIS. The real reason they will be coming is to hit Iran. And let's fast forward to this graphic. The president of Iraq says, don't overburden Iraq with your own issues. The US is a major power, but do not pursue your own policy priorities. We live here.
Of course, he has to say that. Otherwise, he'll get thrown out of office. So he bungled it again. The serial bungler strikes one more time. So good. I hope we're not in Syria, Afghanistan, or Iraq. I want to withdraw all those troops. I think we've made a complete mess of the Middle East. And if Trump is accidentally, for whatever his purposes are in Syria, I'll give him that he's genuine in Afghanistan. I don't really believe that, but that's okay. I like what he's doing in Afghanistan. And he bungles us out of Iraq. Wonderful. I like where that policy ends up, but we didn't get there in the right way as usual. And his supporters, make up your mind. Are you for withdrawing Iraq and you think that he was playing three-dimensional chess and purposely sabotaged his own policy by saying that out loud? Or will you finally acknowledge he's an idiot who never does any homework, so he didn't know that you're not supposed to say your secret reason for staying in Iraq?
It would be really funny if it weren't the president. Right, but that's the guy who's leading the country. And remember, he's the one who would point fingers at previous presidents, including Obama, for making the country less safe, for not having a smart foreign policy. Like, the thing that always amazes me about Trump is his inability to understand that he doesn't have any leg to stand on when he's criticizing the intelligence of other people. Like, you just don't, ever, ever. Okay, let's move on to the best story of the day. Executive time.
What time is it? It's executive time. I wish I had more executive time. All right, but let's do it.
All right. You wouldn't take advantage of it if you had it.
I know.
A White House insider leaked Donald Trump's schedules. In fact, 3 months worth of Donald Trump's schedules. And it made it clear that he gets a lot of free time, which is given the euphemism of executive time. The schedules, according to Axios, which broke this story, covered nearly every working day since the midterms. And they show that Trump has spent around 60% of his scheduled time over the past 3 months in unstructured executive time. 60%, so more than half of his time is doing unstructured executive time, which we all know what that means. It means tweeting, watching cable news, dilly-dallying, and it's usually in the morning. Trump, an early riser, usually spends the first 5 hours of the day in executive time. Each day's schedule places Trump in location, Oval Office, from 8 to 11 a.m. Now, Oval Office is where he would allegedly be working during his executive time, but it turns out that he's actually hanging out in the White House residence where the work doesn't happen. And we have this fun little bar graph to show you how the time is divided. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so it gives you the amount of hours he spent during this 3 months in executive time, 297 hours and 15 minutes. When it came to meetings, it was 77 hours and 5 minutes, and 38 hours for lunch, 20 minutes for events, whatever that means. So you get the picture. The majority of his time is spent doing nothing.
Okay, look, let me break that chart down a little bit further, okay? So first of all, that's over a 3-month period, all right? So I probably spend 77 hours in meetings in 1 week, okay? Let alone in 3 months. And I run a small business. So now, the 60% is so-called executive time, which is now my new favorite euphemism, except for what Sarah Huckabee Sanders is gonna add as a corollary in a minute. But notice that the rest of it isn't all work. There's lunch in there, there's travel. What is that, like from his residence to the Oval Office, for how long it takes him to walk, or whatever, no, legitimate travel to, etc. But you could work during the travel. They're like, no, whoa, that's travel, okay? We can't bother the president's precious little 3 IQ points with having him work during travel. So now their main excuse is, well, by the way, just to finish up what Anna was saying, 8 to 11, he's supposed to be in the Oval Office. He never goes. He's still in the residence, still watching Fox, right? And so his first meeting is usually at 11 o'clock. But a lot of times that doesn't happen either. And it's either supposed to be a national security briefing where he's like, all right, whatever, what's going on now? Don't make it over a page, okay? And I want some pictures in there. Or a meeting with his chief of staff. I mean, if I'm the president of the United States and I got up at 5 in the morning, right? I'm gonna wait 6 hours for my chief of staff to come in and tell me what we're doing that day.
It's crazy.
Or what's going on in the world.
It's insane. It really is. But okay, so the White House and some of Trump's allies, I guess, came out and said, no, this doesn't really paint the full picture of what executive time is. Because oftentimes Trump will take meetings that he doesn't want the public to know about during his executive time.
Yeah, probably with donors.
Okay, thank you. That makes me feel so much better that he's having these secret meetings that he doesn't want the public to know about during his executive time. Yeah, look, I think it's clear that he's not someone who has any type of curiosity about the world around him, curiosity about different policies and what works, what doesn't. He's a one-pager kind of guy, as Senator Lindsey Graham said, a Republican.
Who is a big backer of this.
Right.
Okay, so let me just say about the secret meetings he's having. Other reporting has clearly indicated what those are, which is calling his buddies. And one of my favorite parts of that is that Trump is always looking around to see where the leaker is. He's like, there's terrible leaking going on here. And people recognize after a while, the leaker was inside the house. It was Trump calling up his idiot buddies that he goes golfing with and telling them, and then they would leak to the press. That's what he uses for his secret meeting during the executive time.
It's crazy. So
national embarrassment.
So some other fun tidbits that we learned through Axios. The day after the midterms, Trump's schedule had 30 minutes for a chief of staff meeting and more than 7 hours for executive time.
Dude, you just got your ass handed to you. The Democrats picked up 40, now maybe 41 seats, a historic landslide election for the opposing party. You worked a half an hour the next day? You worked a half an hour the next day. That's unbelievable. I mean, maybe you have. I don't know, have you ever gone to work and worked half an hour? And if you did, didn't you feel a little guilty? Or if you don't like your boss or your work, did you feel like, yeah, I stuck it to the man? But working half an hour, that's unbelievable. And he has no ability to work, to plan, to do homework, to study, to understand the world.
Look, he needed those 7 hours to sulk and feel sorry for himself.
Totally.
So you know what? Take that time, Trump. And by the way, I'm not even complaining. I mean, would I prefer that he's a super, a hyperactive president who's constantly destroying things? I mean, he's already doing that, but imagine how much worse it would be if he didn't take as much executive time, if he didn't watch as much cable TV. One other thing I wanted to mention is the response from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, which was hilarious. She says, President Trump has a different leadership style than his predecessors, and the results speak for themselves. Yes, they do.
Agreed.
They certainly do speak for themselves.
I think she said that on purpose, man. I think everybody's counting down to when do we get out of here, right? And so she's like, oh, I don't want to tell you they're great. I'm just gonna say the results speak for themselves.
Then she says this. While he spends much of his average day in scheduled meetings and calls, there is time to allow for a more creative environment that has helped make him the most productive president in modern history.
Oh yeah, no, but my favorite time there's the creative environment.
Yes, he's a creative guy.
No, listen, man. Sometimes I just need to get 7 hours in a workday to just sit on my ass to create a creative environment. Come on, if you said that to your boss, and by the way, we're Donald Trump's boss. He represents the people of the United States of America. If you went to your boss and was like, no, look, it seems like I didn't work those 7 hours, but you have to be fair to me. I was creating a creative environment.
I'm kind of into it. I think I might try it out.
Yeah, well, how do you think that plays out for you guys? Okay, no, he's a child. He doesn't want to do his homework. He has the most important job in the world, and he just doesn't want to do it. He doesn't care. He has no intellectual curiosity. And by the way, that's why he's a serial bungler. So not only does he screw up US foreign policy and domestic policy, but he also screws up his own plans. That's why he's so bad at his job. They're like, hey, Donald Trump, why are you declaring a national emergency to get funding for the wall? I don't know, because I didn't think about it for 2 years. Well, you had all that executive time to think about it. Okay, in those creative environments that you created, did it not occur to you for 2 years you didn't ask funding for the wall? That all you asked was for tax cuts for the rich? That didn't occur to you? So if you couldn't cook that up in your executive time, what are you doing on your executive time? As usual, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a hardcore MAGA guy. You know he's not working. You know he's a bum. And you like that bum because he hates the same people you hate, okay? But own it, that's not a smart guy. That's not a hardworking guy. There is no secret work being done in creative environments. And everyone in the country knows it.
Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam is in hot water over a yearbook picture. We're going to talk about that story and also do a deep dive into North Carolina's abortion laws when we return.